Welcome back to another lesson in our series, Parables of Jesus. Our parable today is the parable of the tares, or parable of the weeds, found in Matthew chapter 13. We'll begin reading in verse 24. He put another parable before them, saying, "The kingdom of heaven may be compared to a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while his men were sleeping, the enemy came and sowed some weeds among the wheat and went away. So when the plants came up and bore grain, then the weeds appeared also. And the servants of the master of the house came and said to him, 'Master, did you not sow good seed in your field? How then does it have weeds?' He said to them, 'An enemy has done this.' So the servant said to him, 'Then do you want us to go and gather them?' But he said, 'No, lest in gathering the weeds you root up the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. And at harvest time I will tell the reapers, gather the weeds first and bind them in bundles to be burned, but gather the wheat into my barn.'" Dropping down to verse 36. Then he left the crowds and went into the house, and his disciples came to him, saying, "Explain to us the parable of the weeds of the field." He answered, "The one who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world, and the good seed is the sons of the kingdom. The weeds are the sons of the evil one, and the enemy who sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are angels. Just as the weeds are gathered and burned with fire, so will it be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send his angels, and they will gather out of his kingdom all causes of sin and all lawbreakers, and throw them into the fiery furnace. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. He who has ears, let him hear." It seems the world just can't get enough of spy novels. This genre has been around for decades. Mata Hari in World War I and World War II had a plethora of intrigue, with the likes of Julia Childs and Josephine Baker working for the Allied effort. The Cold War has gotten more than its fair share of thrillers, with the communists vying for dominance against the West. The end of the Cold War didn't diminish the spying industry. Books have spawned movies and television series. Ian Fleming in the 007 series and Robert Ludlum's Jason Bourne, Tom Clancy with Jack Ryan, Jean Le Carre with his Cold War novels, and on it goes. We just can't get enough. But spying didn't just start in the 20th century. It has been around for a long time. Take Sun Tzu's Art of War, written in China 400 years before Christ. Chapter 13 of his book is devoted to the use of spies. He writes, "Hence the use of spies, of whom there are 5 classes. Local spies, inward spies, converted spies, doomed spies, and surviving spies. With these 5 kinds of spy are all at work. None can discover the secret system. This is called divine manipulation of the threads. It is a sovereign's most precious faculty." In the Bible, we have the well-known spies who went into the land of Canaan 15 centuries before Christ. Even further back, Joseph accuses his brothers of being spies in Egypt in Genesis 42. So spying is nothing new. Spying between allies in war and peace is very common. Sometimes spying is to gain information and advantage. Sometimes it is used to plant disinformation. That brings us to today's parable, known commonly as the parable of the tares, or as modern versions call them, weeds. Jesus has begun his series of teaching with parables. Having just finished the parable of the soils, or sower, he tells this most curious of parables about another man who sows seed in his field. Jesus tells us the kingdom of heaven may be compared to a man who sowed good seed in his field in verse 24. The kingdom of heaven here in Matthew 13 is the same as the kingdom of God in Mark 4 and Luke 8. They're interchangeable. A simple search with a concordance will show that the term kingdom of heaven is exclusive to the Gospel of Matthew. While Matthew does occasionally use kingdom of God in his gospel, it is a term that Mark, Luke, John, and Paul use to describe the coming church, although it can have general meaning of that which God rules over. Like the parable of the sower, Jesus explains in detail the meaning of this parable. Yet, even in the explanation, many have been perplexed as to the scope of this parable. Many have swung wildly to the left and to the right of this parable. Some have supposed that it is not the church's responsibility to cast out the wicked from among them. Paul would be surprised at this, for he writes to the church in Corinth in 1 Corinthians 5:2, "And you are arrogant? Ought you not rather to mourn? Let him who has done this be removed from among you." At the other end of the spectrum are those who would use violent means, like the Spanish Inquisition, to put to death the heretics by the thousands. As usual, the truth lies in the middle. This parable is not primarily focused for or against church discipline, but upon the general knowledge that evil will exist in the world, even within the kingdom of heaven. It shows us that the devil is going to be hard at work to destroy the people of God. Take a look at the book of Revelation, and in particular, chapter 12, verse 17, and see the lengths to which Satan is going to go to make war on the saints. But in the end, God will know who has overcome and remained faithful. Once again, it is so unique the way Jesus uses everyday elements to describe this process. The darnel known as false wheat looks identical to real wheat and can only be distinguished later in its growth. Such is the way of false teaching. It has the appearance of truth. And, as Paul tells us, Satan masquerades as an angel of light in 2 Corinthians 11:14, putting forth seeds of apostasy. Notice when he sows, when men sleep, Matthew 13:25. So, watch for those spies, those wolves in sheep's clothing. Hey, are you awake? And Lord willing, let's meet here again tomorrow and look at another parable of Jesus.